From being one of the safest and most hospitable places for immigrants to being involved in a gang war, Sweden is in a serious problem. Since the 2000s, Sweden has become a home to a huge number of immigrants, mainly because of their immigration and asylum laws. However, it was in 2015 when these numbers skyrocketed, going over 160,000 immigrants. Approximately half of these immigrants are unemployed, and nearly 9 times more dependent on the government's welfare. They mostly live in poor neighborhoods and aren't well mixed with Swedish society. This is where the armed gang recruited new members, and Sweden went from having one of the lowest gun crime rates to the second highest across Europe. In 2022, these gangs claimed the lives of over 62 citizens of Sweden, more than ever before. Talking about Stockholm alone, the Wall Street Journal calculated that the murder rates per capita is 30 times higher than in London. Sweden, a Nordic country located on the Scandinavian peninsula in northern Europe, was regarded as one of the safest countries in Europe. It's also one of the richest countries in the world, having a GDP per capita of $60,000. Sweden also ranks high among the countries with the best health and education systems. However, their immigration and asylum laws, and how they mixed up with the immigrants as a society, play a huge role in where they are today. You see, Sweden's renowned welfare system, which provides extensive supports for the elderly, sick, unemployed, and a large number of refugees, is relatively new, only a few decades old. Before adopting this welfare system, Sweden had already achieved wealth and success. In the 1870s, Sweden's economy wasn't even half that of Northern and Western Europe, and its GDP per capita was only half that of Great Britain. Approximately 75% of its population relied on farming, which was very difficult in the semi-Arctic climate. However, they adopted a strong work ethic, focusing on hard work, individual responsibility, and family values. Sweden became one of the fastest growing economies back when the world began to industrialize. They remained neutral in both world wars and continued to develop their welfare system. It was in the 1960s when they made huge reforms to their welfare system, popularizing the concept of folkhem, or people's homes. This idea portrayed Sweden as a family, where citizens were expected to care for each other like siblings. It partly explains Sweden's acceptance of refugees. Today, Sweden's welfare state offers incredible benefits to all its citizens, whether native or immigrant. As previously discussed, healthcare and education are almost free here and among the best there is. Additionally, when a child is born or adopted, each parent can take up to 240 days of parental leave. Additionally, a married, retired couple receives payments that nearly match their income pre-retirement. However, the government's generosity comes at a cost, which is funded through taxes. In 1950, the personal income tax stood at 21%. By 1995, it had been increased to 52%. These changes affected the economy big time. Sweden was the 4th richest country in Europe in 1975, but dropped down to 14th by 1993. Also, the employment rate wasn't very impressive. These figures show that while this welfare system was doing a lot of good, it practically failed to improve the things that they were already remarkable in. In 1987, only 3% of the Swedish population was non-European, and by 2013, this percentage was already at 12%. One major reason for Sweden's downfall is its employment ratio. According to research, a group of immigrants who escaped Saddam Hussein's Iraq in the 1980s and 90s were 2.3 times more likely to have a higher education compared to native Swedes. However, once in Sweden, only 18% of these immigrants were employed. But why such a low percentage when they were relatively highly educated? You see, back in 2004, the average income of an Iranian immigrant in Sweden was just 65% compared to a native Swede, while the average income of an Iranian immigrant was about 136 compared to a native US citizen. The immigrants were clearly struggling. Sweden managed the new arrivals of immigrants by scattering them in different corners of the country, overlooking the local economic conditions in the process. Additionally, a huge portion of jobs in Sweden are already filled through informal means such as personal connections, and the language barrier plays a huge role in this percentage. During all of it, Sweden's welfare state was fulfilling the immigrants' basic needs and requirements. In the 2000s, however, things changed and more immigrants started to come to Sweden. The biggest year for immigrants was in 2015, when over 160,000 new immigrants came into the country. These immigrants came from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and around 20% of the Swedish population consisted of non-native descent. Because of such a huge number, many immigrants ended up living in poor neighborhoods and were treated with inequality, depending totally on the state's welfare. This situation not only placed a burden on the state, but also served as a center for criminal activities, mostly conducted by second-generation immigrants. Sweden had witnessed nothing like this before. But the real question is, why can't Sweden control these gang violence and crimes? Well, there are many reasons for that. Firstly, the Prime Minister of Sweden, Ulf Kristersson, asked the commander of the Swedish army and the National Police Chief of Sweden to collaborate and help each other in fighting against these crimes. As of right now, no soldiers are patrolling the streets of Sweden, but this goes to show how dangerous the situation in this country has become. Investigative journalist Diamond Salihu explained the situation saying, "But there is one major conflict at the moment within a network called the Foxtrot Network that has been divided into fractions because of death, because of internal conflicts, and they are now fighting each other to the death." A big problem that Swedish authorities have when it comes to dealing with this situation that we have at the moment is that the leaders that control a lot of the drug market they are operating from abroad. Another reason the Swedish government struggles to control this situation is because the gangs prefer to recruit young and naive teenagers. They recruit these teenagers from poor neighborhoods and pay them a couple $100s to do illegal tasks. They might also be paid more to commit murders. Another reason, apart from money, why these kids decide to go down this path is because the punishment for getting caught isn't that serious. Diamond Salihu said, "In Sweden, if you commit a murder and if you're 16, you can get a maximum of 4 years in youth custody where you can have access to an iPad and communicate with friends on the other side, so the risk is very low for the reward. They can get either money or, quite often, status." However, one of the biggest reasons why Sweden is losing control is that these gangs aren't just limited to selling drugs or committing crimes. They have infiltrated the government and even the political parties, and they make money from fraud or other activities. According to research, these criminal organizations make approximately $500 million in profit, which helps them more than enough with the budget to commit more and more crimes and recruit more and more people. More than half of the individuals serving long prison terms in Sweden are first-generation immigrants, while 45% of the country's unemployed population is foreign-born. Sweden Democrats since the 2010s have been the only ones against these immigration policies. Because of the immigration crisis today, they have become one of the biggest political groups in Sweden. The current Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson is also working closely with the Sweden Democrats, breaking the traditions. The right-wing coalition believes that Sweden's past immigration policies are the reason for the increasing gang crimes. His foreign minister said, "We can now see that outside shift and lack of integration in combination with trade of narcotics and organized crime is creating this very, very toxic mixture." While taking proper measures is the utmost necessity for the future, it is wrong to blame all the things totally on the immigrants. Maybe it was the very system that failed to accept and provide equal rights to the new arrivals. Many people argue that Sweden's current immigration policies are implementing discriminatory measures, making it difficult for non-European immigrants to get the same social benefits as European immigrants. They are even making it harder for immigrant children, making preschool compulsory for them to learn Swedish. What do you think about these policies? Are these measures necessary to solve the country's current crisis, or is something more extreme needed? Do let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, press that notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.